those who want to go to Hajj, but I usually just run it for the people who are stuck here who are not going to Hajj, which is the majority of us. I find it to be beneficial for me to listen, to think about it, and to reflect on this very important pillar of Islam. It's a pillar, remember that. That's an important piece of information to keep with you. That Hajj is not just a regular action. It's a pillar of Islam. It is equivalent, or it's equal to zakah and siyam and salah. They're all very important things in our lives, and if you don't do them, then you are missing a major part of your rituals and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are all obligatory actions upon you as an individual. And Hajj is a very special one, because within it, you kind of do all of them, like to a certain degree. To a certain degree, there's a lot of prayer in Hajj. There's a lot of, you don't eat as much, so you're fasting kind of to a certain degree. You're spending a lot of money on it and giving sadaqah. So almost all of the rituals are kind of put together in one. And it's something that you do once in a lifetime. And it only occurs once a year. So if you can do it more than once in a lifetime, but you're required to do it once in a lifetime, you don't have to do it more than that. I don't believe these days that's appropriate to do it more than once in a lifetime. It's my opinion. Of course, other scholars may disagree with me, and you're welcome to disagree with me. I think once in a lifetime is enough for it, mainly because if you think of the number of Muslims that exist on the planet and the amount of Muslims that you can fit in Hajj, we don't have it's impossible. If you're going to fit everyone in, people can't be doing it more than once. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are Muslim but have no interest in doing Hajj in their lives at all, and of course that's a problem. I think that those who don't want to do Hajj don't do it. They don't do it because they don't know what it's about. These sessions over the next 3 weeks, or this week and the next 2 weeks, I will talk about the different aspects of Hajj. I'll talk about the fiqh of Hajj, meaning the jurisprudence piece, the issues of halal and haram, and must not, and do's and don'ts, and all of the technical aspects. But really, the focus of these sessions, at least the 2/3 of them, will be upon the spiritual journey. What exactly does Hajj symbolize, and why is it that you are performing the ritual the way you're performing it? So, as every other action of Islam, there is the fiqh, there is the jurisprudent piece, the apparent piece, the mechanics, and then there is the spiritual, right? The symbolic, the figurative, the piece that is the essence of why you're doing this action. Like salah. Salah, you have to learn the mechanics. You have to learn how to make wudu. And then you have to learn all of the conditions for prayer and how to stand and how to face and what to say and all the movements and all of that in order for your prayer to be acceptable. And then, if you don't understand the essence of salah, like if you don't understand why you stand and why you bow and why you stand again and then why you prostrate and why you sit and what these actions are symbolizing and where your heart and mind should be when you're doing them, then you don't benefit as much. You did the action, but you didn't get anything out of it, right? So in every act of worship that we have in our deen, you have to learn both. And Hajj, we will talk about the fiqh today. We'll talk about the mechanics. I'll explain to you the different actions, what they're called, and why, how to do them, and all those details. And then next week and the week after, I'll explain to you why you're doing it. Like, what's the point of this? Why do you get on a plane and go? I need 14,000 kilometers to a place and do all these things. And you think about it, so it's interesting, the amount of travel that happens in the world. A lot of it goes towards these two spots, to Mecca and Medina, right? And they're not great tourist attractions, are they? Like when you think of the tourist attractions in the world, like the European countries and the beaches in the world and the warm parts, and you understand why they're tourist attractions because of the weather and the water and the nature, and not Mecca and Medina. There's no weather, there's no water, there's no nature, there's nothing. But there's something different. There's something much more valuable if you understand it. So we'll try, inshallah, explain it in a way that you walk away feeling connected and hopefully excited about performing Hajj and Umrah later on. Umrah is very similar. Umrah is just a mini Hajj basically. You're just doing, but you're not doing as many things in it, but you're doing enough. All right. So reminding, it's the fifth pillar of Islam, right? And it's an obligatory pilgrimage that you perform to Mecca. You have to be physically and financially able. So that's the piece of Hajj, that first part of it from a fiqh perspective. وَالِاسْتِطَاعَ وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. And we owe it to Allah to perform pilgrimage to His house, to the Kaaba, to go perform pilgrimage to Mecca, Man istata'a ilayhi sabila. Whoever it is who has the ability. And there are two parts of ability. So you have to be capable physically, you have to be capable financially. Both capability are important. So if you're not capable physically, for example, you are ill, or you are you have a disability, or you're not capable, then you can either have someone do it on your behalf, or if you don't have the financial, then it's not obligatory upon you. So people who spent their lives in poverty, for example, they had no money, so they had no financial ability, and by the time they made some money, they were too old. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives them. They don't carry that burden. Some madhahib, some of the Islamic jurisprudence schools will say that if you have the money, but you don't have the physical ability, then you can send someone on your behalf to perform Hajj. This is a known aspect of Hajj, where you can actually pay someone to go and perform Hajj for you. Not all of the schools of jurisprudence allow for that, and some of them are much more lenient. So if you don't have the ability to do it physically, then it's not obligatory upon you. But you need both. To point something out here that I get asked often, what is financial ability? Are you obligated to immediately perform Hajj the moment you have $15,000 in your bank account? Because I need to say that's the cheapest of all the Hajj price tags that exist here from Canada. If the moment you have 15,000, do you need to go? No, it depends on where you are in your life. So as a student, for example, you're studying, you can finish your studies. If you're looking to get married, you get married, all that stuff. You wait until you're in a position where you have a proper income, you have a proper rhythm of paying off whatever debt you carry, and then you can go ahead and you can perform Hajj. I would say the following, that you should not indulge in large acts of leisure if you haven't done Hajj. So you shouldn't be spending like large amounts of money on acts of leisure if you are capable of performing Hajj. If you have not performed Hajj and you can afford to do it. So some people who, I ask, and then they go and they spend the summer and they spend like $30,000, $40,000 on a trip, and no, that Hajj was awla. Right? Hajj is, and this narrative that comes out every once in a while that kind of says, well, we shouldn't perform Hajj because it is feeding the government that we don't agree. Yeah, then don't do more than one Hajj, right? Then don't do like extra umrahs. But doing the one obligatory Hajj that is upon you, you should do it regardless of whether you agree with the government of the country that's running the Haramain or you don't. I don't think that's I don't think we stop performing our pilgrimage, our faridah, because of this. There are scholars who have made this argument in the past, and of course they are respected, and so are their opinions. I don't agree with it necessarily. I think you should perform Hajj anyways, but I think the multiple Hajjs and the multiple Umrahs, maybe that you can hold back on from if you don't want to be feeding a government that you don't think is treating people and treating others well. I can understand that. And if you don't care about that topic at all, and this is not something you think about, you're doing it, then I accept and I understand that opinion as well. I think politics is politics. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. I'm not too, I don't get too excited about it. So, we think AI has come a long way, but it hasn't. So forgive some of these mistakes. So I'm going to share with you the pillars of Hajj and Umrah, and I put the word Shafi'i and Hanbali up there because most of what I'm going to be sharing on these slides is going to be according to the Shafi'i and Hanbali madhab, because they're very similar in Hajj. I will point out for you what the Hanafis and the Malikis say as well. All of it is khair and all of it is correct, and you can follow whatever you want. I point out Shafi'i and Hanbali specifically because that is what the government of the country that you're going to perform Hajj in, that's what they follow. The majority of people there follow the Hanbali school of jurisprudence, and some of them follow the Shafi'i school. Much less Hanafis and Malikis in Mecca and Medina today. Interestingly enough, Medina is where the Maliki madhab was born, and yet it has almost no Malikis in it anymore. And that's just a movement of knowledge over time, so it's no big deal. And I advise people to learn how to perform Hajj based on this. Why? Because that's the madhab of the country that is serving the Mecca and Medina. Previously, during the Ottoman Empire, when they were servicing the Kaaba, and they followed the Hanafi madhab, it was obligatory upon people going to Hajj to perform Hajj based on the Hanafi madhab. Why? Because that's the madhab, or that's the school of thought that the people who are servicing the haram are following, so that you're in sync with them, because they're going to be organizing stuff, so that you're synchronized with their organization. You should understand how to do it based on the Hanafi and do it that way. So even if you're a strict follower of a school of jurisprudence, even if you're a strict Maliki, for example, my advice to you is learn how to perform it based on the Shafi'i and the Hanbali, so that when you go there, you are not out of place and you don't get lost and you don't feel upset about things, because they do run it based on their understanding. They're much better today than they were maybe 25 years ago, when it was very strict. They ran it by one opinion and they were very difficult. Now they're much more accepting of different opinions, but still the majority of them will follow the Shafi'i and the Hanbali madhab, Hanbali specifically. So what are the pillars of Hajj? What are the arkan of Hajj? When I say the word pillar from a jurisprudent perspective, that is something that the action itself will not be complete until you do it. So if you don't do this, then your action is not complete. So for example, if I tell you there's a pillar of salah, if I tell you, for example, that ruku' is a pillar of salah, if you don't perform the bowing that rak'ah is invalid. And if you don't go back and repeat the rak'ah, then your whole salah was invalid. Let's say you got everything else. You did every other movement, but you just missed one ruku'. You lose your salah. Why? Because it's a pillar. So you have to learn in jurisprudence, you have to learn what are pillars, what are recommended actions in sunnah, and what are nawaqid, what are invalidators, what are the things that if you do them, you lose the action itself, right? For example, for salah, a sunnah in salah is to, for example, recite a surah after Fatiha, right? In the first rak'ah, you recite Fatiha, and then you recite the surah after. That's a sunnah. If you don't do that, your salah is fine. Like your salah is not invalid, right? It's a sunnah. It's a recommended action. It's a good thing to do. You should do it, right? Letting out air during salah is an invalidator. You lose your prayer. So if you fart in prayer, forgive me, then you have to repeat your prayer. So in every action, in every act or ritual of Islam, there are things that are pillars, musts. If you don't do these musts, then you have to repeat the whole action, or you have to go back and do it again. There are recommended actions, sunnahs as we call them, things that are, if you do them, you get more reward, but if you don't do them, your action still counts. And then you have invalidators. And between these three, there's one more category that I'm going to shove between 1 and 2, kind of give it a little shimmy, a little bit of space here, called a wajib. So you have a pillar and then you have an obligatory action. And in Hajj, the difference between a fard, a pillar, and obligatory action, I'm going to explain to you once I talk about wajib. But they're both things you must do. But if you don't do a wajib, you don't lose your Hajj. You don't necessarily have to do it again, but you owe something for that. You owe an expiation. You owe a kafara for it. And I'll explain to you in a few minutes. So first of all, memorize the pillars of Hajj. Number 1, al-ihram, which is the intention, which is the act of, it's an act that shows the intention of Hajj, so performing ihram, and I'll explain that in what it means. And number 2, standing in Arafah, so al-wuquf bi Arafah. Number 3, tawaf al-ifada, so one tawaf basically, one tawaf. The choice is tawaf al-ifada, but honestly, you just have to do one tawaf, right? And then number 4, as-sa'i, performing sa'i between Safa and Marwa. The Hanafis have only 2 pillars, specifically. They have a different opinion on this. The Malikis are the same. It's very loud. They're the same technically. They have certain differences in the wording. But the Hanafis have a different approach. They only have 2 pillars. It's ihram and wuquf bi Arafah. Wuquf bi Arafah and tawaf. That's it. So you have to stand in Arafah for a bit and then do tawaf. And then everything else is, but so if you do those 2, it's acceptable for the Hanafis. Obviously with a lot of caveats to what I explained. And again, I'm not going to, if I'm going to go to each madhab and explain to you how it works, it'll take us 50 years to do this. So I'm going to just give you little kind of nuggets here and there. So memorize the 4 arkan. Why? Because these pillars, if you miss one of them, your Hajj is not done until you go back and do them. So if someone gets on a plane and goes back to his house, right, and he didn't do tawaf, he is still technically in Hajj. He's still in ihram. Like he cannot leave the state of ihram yet. But he's in London, I know, but you're still in, or you invalidate your Hajj. You declare that your Hajj is invalid and you have to go back and do it again next year. Or you get on a plane, you go back, and you perform tawaf. So it's like when you enter into the state of ihram, as I'll explain in a few minutes, you enter in a state, a spiritual and physical state, and you can only leave that state by finishing all of the rest of the pillars. Standing in Arafah, performing tawaf, performing sa'i. These four things have to happen. If you miss them, if you don't do ihram, like if you don't enter the state of ihram, or if you don't stand in Arafah, or if you don't perform circumambulation, tawaf, or if you don't do sa'i, then your hajj is not going to be valid. And you can't make up for one of these four with an expiation. They have to be done. All right. For Umrah, which is the mini version of Hajj, you only have three pillars. So you just drop number two because there's no standing in Arafah during Umrah. So the pillars of Umrah is Ihram and then Tawaf and Sa'i. So it's easy to remember. If you just think of Umrah, what are the pillars of Umrah? I have to enter the state of Ihram, I have to do Tawaf and Sa'i. Hajj is the same, just add Arafah to it, and now you have Hajj. And that's for the Shafi'i and the Hanbali, and most of the Malikis. Like I said, the Hanafis are a little bit more lenient on this issue. It's easier to perform Hajj on the Hanafi madhab, honestly. They're much more lenient on many topics. So I don't mind if that's what you decide to do. So the obligations of Hajj. The obligations of Hajj, I told you, between the pillar and between the recommended actions, we shimmy in one more category called the wajibat, the obligations. These are things that you must do, but if you don't have, it doesn't invalidate your Hajj. You don't have to go back and do them. You just owe a kafara. You owe a hadi. You owe to slaughter a sheep and feed the poor. Like you owe one. Sometimes you'll owe multiple hadi depending on what you leave. So not for each one. If you leave, there's 7 up there. If you leave all, if you leave all 7, you don't owe 7 kharuf, right? But sometimes if they're different enough, you will owe more than one. So that's why it's always important that you study this, and that if you make mistakes in Hajj, like you don't do things perfectly, before you leave, you go to one of the scholars, or they have these services there. Where you can turn to someone and say, I didn't do this and this and this. What should I perform? They'll tell you if it's 1 hadi or 2. And hadi, when I say the word hadi, I'm going to use this word a lot. It is the slaughtering of, or the offering of 1 sheep or 1 goat. And sometimes it can be bigger, like a cow or a bull or a camel, but 1 sheep or 1 goat, right? So sometimes you owe a hadi for mistakes that you make in Hajj. One of the mistakes, what about the pillars? Do you owe a hadi there? You do, but you still have to go back and do it. So a hadi won't make up for it. But for the wajibat, a hadi will. Right? So that's the difference. In a pillar, you should offer a hadi for missing it, but you still have to go back and do it. So if you missed it and then you go back and do it, good for you, but you owe a hadi. A wajib, if you missed it, then you can go back, you can do it again, but if you can't do it again because its time is up, or then you just owe a hadi for it, right? The sunan, the recommended actions, I will explain to you in a moment, you don't owe anything. Like if you don't do them, if you do none of them, you owe nothing. No hadi, nothing, you're fine, right? Because it's recommended. If you do them, you get more reward. You don't do them, you're fine. So what are the 7 wajibat of Hajj? Again, this is according to the Hanbali madhab, okay? This is where, of course, there's a lot of difference between Shafi'is and Malikis and Hanafis. I'm not going to get into it. It's way too complicated. Just this is how the Hanbalis look at it, and I'm using them because they are the guardians or the servants of the Kaaba today follow this way of thought. So I think it's worthwhile knowing this ahead of anything else. Yeah, maybe bring it down a little bit. It's very bothersome. So number 1, al-ihram. You killed it off. I can't even hear myself. Al-ihram min al-miqat. So performing ihram from the miqat. And I'll explain to you what miqat is in a moment as well. So performing the act of ihram from the miqat. So since we've talked about it twice, let's talk about ihram for a moment. Okay, what is ihram? So ihram, it is did I put miqat? Okay. Ihram is entering into a physical and spiritual state. I think about it as transitioning from your old life to a new life. It's like entering a membrane. You're leaving your old life behind, and you're entering into a different state right now. A state where you're not allowed to perform a lot of the actions you were performing in the original state. So the ihram for the men is where you're not allowed to wear anything that's stitched together anymore. Anything that's stitched, everything that you're wearing has stitches where they're adding pieces of fabric together. You can only wear 2 pieces of white cloth, right? As we can see in this lovely little picture. So you're wearing 2 pieces of white cloth. One that covers the lower part of your body. It's 1 piece of cloth. You can tie it together or put a belt on it. Yeah? And one that you put on top of your body. And women don't have to do this. They just have to dress in a way. They have to dress in clothing that are not revealing, dark in color, and their faces and their hands are going to be apparent at all times during Hajj. That's the ihram for ladies. When you enter in the ihram, you make the intention of Hajj. So this is the only intention in all the acts of worship in Islam where you verbalize it. And you say, Nawaitul Hajj, Lillahi Ta'ala. And then you explain what type of Hajj, and I'll explain to you what types there are in a moment. So you make the intention of Hajj, and then you take off the clothing you wore before, and you're wearing these 2 pieces of cloth. And you don't wear clothing that's stitched. You don't perfume on. You're not allowed to have sexual relations with your spouse. You're not allowed to hunt, for example, or kill for game. So there's a bunch of things that you're no longer allowed to do in the state of ihram. And if you do these things, then you owe a hadi for them. Like every mistake you make, you'll owe a hadi. I think the record I heard once from a sheikh is that a man went to Hajj and owed 9 hadi when he came back. Yeah, because he, mashallah, did not leave a mistake or that could be made, that is a possibility to be made in Hajj that he did not make in Hajj, which is where education comes in. Like if you learn properly about Hajj, you don't make any, you're fine. You'll get through without making any mistakes, and you'll get it all right. But if you go kind of aimless, then you'll make a lot of mistakes. So kind of knowing. So ihram is this situation, is this state that you're entering in. It needs to it happens during a time, so you do it right before you go perform Umrah or right before you go perform Hajj. But it has to happen at a certain place, which is called a miqat. The word miqat in Arabic comes from waqt. Waqt is time. And then this derivative miqat means a time and place. Miqat means a time and place. So up there you see the different places where people perform miqats, and these are and how far away they are from or no, not this one, this one, yeah. So you can see how far they are away from Mecca. So each one is for a different group of people. So depending on where you're coming from, you'll perform your ihram at one of these mawaqit, at one of these transition areas. You arrive at them, and that is where you transition. You put your old life behind you, and you dress into something very simple, and you're no longer interested in the opposite sex anymore. You're not putting on perfume. You're not cutting your nails. You're not cutting your hair. You're just all of issues of materialistic existence that existed before. You're going to put behind. You're going to enter into a different state where you're focused on a different aspect of your life. That's the idea behind ihram. Is you're going to now your ihram comes from the root haram mim, which is where the word haram comes from, which means sacred. It means prohibited, but really the prohibition is because it's sacred. Meaning it's a sacred rule or it's a sacred line, meaning you don't cross it. So ihram is to enter yourself into a state of sanctity, of holiness. Now you're in a state of sanctity, where you are not going to be polluted by dunya anymore, by the materialistic desires of this world. You're no longer, khalas, this is all behind you. Now you're in a state of sanctity where it's just your heart and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're there to speak to Allah and to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing else matters. So, and it happens in a place. It's like a membrane, wallahi. You arrive at, so for us, we're coming from the west, so it's either Al-Juhfa or Dhul Hulayfa. Mostly Al-Juhfa is where it happens for us. And then if you're coming from Yemen, it's called Yalamlam. If you're coming from the east, it's Qarn al-Manazil or Dhat Irq. If you're coming from Iraq, and these are all places that you come from. And these are just little spots around Mecca, around somewhere between 70 to 450 kilometers away from it. And you perform your ihram, and then you enter. After that, you go from that spot to the Kaaba in ihram, and you stay in ihram until you're finished the ritual. You're finished Umrah or you're finished Hajj. You stay in that state until you're done whatever it is you're here to do. Okay, that's what the miqat is. So going back to what we were saying a moment ago. So one of the wajib, so ihram itself is a pillar. You have to perform ihram. You can't go into Hajj, go perform Hajj in your jeans. You can't just walk into Hajj in your lab coat or your pajamas because it's more comfortable. You have to perform ihram. You have to go out and perform. You have to perform ihram and then come in dressed that way. No perfume. No, you have to you understand all the rules, and then you come in for Hajj, or else and the same thing for Umrah. Now you can perform tawaf, for example, without ihram, but it's not a Umrah. It's just an act of tawaf. Just like the same thing in sa'i. You can perform a sa'i without Umrah. Right? But if you want to get a Umrah or a Hajj, if you want to get the two rituals, you have to start with entering in the state of sanctity. Enter in ihram. Okay. So ihram's a pillar. Doing it from the miqat is an obligation. It's an obligation. So if you don't do it from the miqat, you broke an obligation, so you owe a hadi. So sometimes people will do ihram from Mecca. They're a traveler, but they'll do ihram from Mecca. For Hajj, you owe a hadi. For Umrah, I don't see it. Like for Umrah, I don't think you need to. You should perform ihram from the miqat for Umrah as well, right? But if you don't, and you go and you perform it from Masjid Sayyidah Aisha in Tan'im, they call it in Mecca, then I don't think you owe anything for Umrah. But for Hajj, if you don't perform, because it's a wajib, right? It's an obligation. If you don't perform it from the miqat, then you owe a hadi. And sometimes people who are coming from Canada, they'll tell them in the plane that this is where you perform, this is the miqat is under you, so go ahead and get you there. They're sleeping, snoring, they get there, they perform Hajj in Jeddah. They perform ihram, in Jeddah. It's acceptable, they just owe a hadi at the end. So I usually tell people, at the end of your Hajj, even if you were an A+ student, you did it perfectly, offer a hadi. First of all, it feeds the poor, so it's a good cause. And also to make sure that if you made the mistake, you didn't notice, that you don't lose the reward of your Hajj. Okay. Number 2, الوقوف بعرفة إلى غروب الشمس. Standing in Arafah until it is sundown. Until it's sundown. So sometimes people, and I'm not going to, for the sake of time, I'm not going to break down every single opinion here. But there are madhahib that allow you to stand in Arafah at night if you need to. Like if you come late, for example, you arrive, your flight was delayed and you didn't make it. You were supposed to make it 2 days before and there was a war and you couldn't make it. You made it and you arrived in Mecca. It was already after sundown of the day of Arafah. The Shafi'is, the Hanbalis, they allow you to stand in Arafah after sundown until Fajr. You can do that. But you owe a hadi. Why? Because you broke an obligation. The obligation was from Fajr to Maghrib, from from dawn to dusk, right? So you're going to stand all that period. If you don't stand that period, you come after, it's acceptable. So the day of Arafah is the 9th day of the Hijjah. Most likely it will be the 26th of May this year. Most likely because we follow whatever Saudi does for Hajj, because we want to be with the Hujjaj basically by heart, so we do whatever they do. Most likely it'll be the 26th of May. So Arafah has a day and a night. So the day is where you should be standing in Arafah, but if you don't make it that day, then you can stand at night. You just owe a hadi at the end. So it's a wajib. Number 3, al-mabitu bi Muzdalifa. Sleeping in Muzdalifa that night. And I'm going to talk to you about all these things in a moment. Just kind of listen to them as I say them. Number 4, sleeping in Mina during the 3 days after Eid. They're called the days of Tashriq. That's a wajib as well, with difference of opinion amongst scholars, of course. Number 5, Rami al-Jamarat, stoning the Jamarat. Number 6, al-Halq or taqsir, shaving or trimming the hair. And number 7, Tawaf al-Wada', the tawaf of the farewell tawaf, meaning the tawaf that you do as you leave Mecca. That's different than this one, than the tawaf that is a pillar. So this is tawaf that's a pillar, and this one, so for the Hanabila, they have 2 tawafs that you should do. The one that's the pillar, and then, so if you only do 1 tawaf for the Hanabila, whatever one when you do 1 tawaf is going to be considered the pillar, and then you just owe a hadi for the one that you didn't do. So memorize these 7 or try to know them if you're going to go to Hajj one day. And I'm going to explain to you what each of them mean. Like in a moment, we're going to go and talk about them one by one. What are the sunnahs and etiquettes of Hajj? What are the recommended actions of Hajj? That if you do, you get reward. If you don't do, then your Hajj is going to be fine, and you owe nothing. You don't owe a hadi, you don't owe anything. It's just these are recommendations. Number 1, al-ghuslu or al-ightisalu qabla al-ihram. So before you do ihram, you take a small shower. Right? So if you can do that, I remember we lived in Mecca for 4 years. And I used to wash the cars with my friend on our block, like on our road. We lived on a road, and there's all these cars. So we wash the cars, and we get like, I don't know, 5 riyal, whatever they gave us. Yani. We would do this all week, and then at the end we would put our money together, and we would pay a taxi cab driver, and he would take us to a Tan'im. Tan'im is the area of Masjid al-Sayyida Aisha, where you can perform ihram. For the people of Mecca, that's where they perform ihram from. So they would take us there. We would go. They have little stalls for showers. Like they have it all set up. At least this is back in the 90s. I don't know anymore. I haven't been there for 27 years. But they still have it there. I don't know if anyone's been there. Yeah, they don't anymore. They used to have these stalls for showers. We used to be able to shower and then come out, wear ihram, get in the taxi. He would drive us to Mecca, to the Kaaba, to the Haram. He would perform tawaf, perform sa'i. They would pay an older Somali gentleman or Pakistani gentleman, and they would cut our hair, shave our heads for us, and then we would go and buy Ruz Bukhari and whatever and eat, and then we would go back home. The nicest thing, the nicest part of my life probably by far. It was grade 7 and 8 and 9. It was really beautiful. So al-ightisal, having a small shower before you do ihram is a sunnah. So if you're capable of doing that, you can't do, and if you can't, obviously there's nothing that you owe. Number 2, wearing white garments. So wearing that they are white. So if they're not white, you don't owe anything. Like they have to be non-stitched. Like they have to be 2 pieces of clothes. But if they're white, that's the sunnah. Number 3, al-iktharu min at-talbiyah. Reciting the talbiyah frequently. And I'll explain to you in talbiyah in a moment. We're going to come and talk about what talbiyah means in a second. And number 4, tawaf al-qudum. Performing a tawaf as the tawaf of welcoming, of arrival. So there's a few types of tawaf in Umrah and Hajj. I'm going to point them out to you. The sunnah of the Muslim is the one that you perform once you arrive in Mecca as arrival. So you perform that. That's just the welcome tawaf. Usually it's done before Arafah. And before everything. It's happening right before Hajj even begins. You're just doing it as a sunnah, as a recommendation. Number 5, al-ittiba'u wal-ramal. Al-ittiba' is where men, when they're wearing their white garment, they take the garment that's above that goes above the right shoulder, and they put it under their shoulder, and their shoulders are out. He did this, alayhi salatu wasalam, during his Umrah al-Qada. The people of Mecca were mocking the Muslims as they were performing Umrah, saying they're all tired and sick and whatever. So the Prophet ﷺ, Rahim Allahu ra'an arahum minhu quwwah. May Allah have mercy upon someone who shows strength. So the Sahaba all took, the Prophet ﷺ showed his bicep basically, and they all did the same thing. So it became a sunnah, and the Sahaba asked him, Ya Rasulullah, ahada lil yawmi am ila abad al-dahr? Is this something that we did because today? Or is this a sunnah forever? فَقَالَ إِلَىٰ أَبَدِ الدَّهْرِ. Until the day of judgment, this will continue to be a sunnah. So for the men, they do ittiba'. And ramal is where they do a small, the jogging that happens for the first 3 and between the green lights and sa'i. I'll show you what I mean in a moment, where you would go a little bit quicker. You're walking and then you do a little bit of a jog between 2 areas, and I'll explain to you in a moment where that happens. And the last one is al-mabitu bi Mina, spending the night in Mina before Arafah. So the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah, called Yawm al-Tarwiyah, the day of irrigation or drinking water, gathering water. That day is right before Arafah, right before Hajj. That night, the sunnah is that you sleep in Mina. But you don't have to. If you don't do that, that's fine. You can be in your hotel. You can be wherever you are, and then come for the morning of Arafah, and that's where Hajj truly begins, and that's where that's where it starts, because that's the pillar that you're going to want to perform. There are 3 types of Hajj. When you make the intention of Hajj, you have to make intention of one of these 3. There's Hajj al-Mutamatti' wa Hajj al-Muqrin or al-Qiran wa Hajj al-Mufrid or al-Ifrad. So each madhab has a different opinion on which is the best. So they don't agree. Al-Hanabila think tamattu', which is why I put it on top, is the best type of Hajj. Because it's in the Quran, فَمَنْ تَمَتَّعَ بِالْعُمْرَةِ إِلَى الْحَجِّ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْهَدِي. So that's because it's in the Quran, they see it to be the most important or significant one. It's not a difference in what you're doing, it's just a difference regarding Umrah. Meaning the difference of the types of Hajj is based on the idea of a Umrah. So if you're not going to do a Umrah at all, you're just going to do Hajj, that's the last one, Al-Ifrad, where you just perform a Hajj. right? And then you either were planning to do Umrah after Hajj was done later on, or you had already done Umrah years ago or something, so you're just here for Hajj, right? Most people do that. I think it's the safest and easiest way. So I think you just stick to that. If you're confused, just do Hajj al-Mufrid. That's enough. Al-Tamattu' is where you perform Umrah during the Hajj months, then exit Ihram and re-enter on the 8th day. So you got on a plane next week and you go to the Haram. You arrive on the first day of the Hijjah, for example, right? And you go ahead and you perform a Umrah. And then you leave this, you have to enter the state of Ihram, obviously, right, to perform Umrah. From your Umrah, cut your hair, you take a few pieces of hair, and now you're leaving the state of Ihram. And you stay in Mecca, not in the state of Ihram, until the 8th day of the Hijjah, right before Arafah. You go back into the state of Ihram. But now you're going back into the state of Ihram, not from the miqat, right? Not from your miqat. Your miqat is a couple of, 100 kilometers that way. You're doing it from Mecca. And when you don't do it from the miqat, what are you required to do? A hadi, right? So that's what a mutamatti' Hajj is, and that's what the Quran says. So you perform an Umrah, you leave the state of Ihram, you stay in Mecca, and then right before Hajj, you go back into the state of Ihram, you perform your Hajj. And then you owe a hadi at the end. Just because you did it that way, that the Quran says, فَمَنْ تَمَتَّعَ بِالْعُمْرَةِ إِلَى الْحَجِّ. Those who enjoyed themselves by performing a Umrah, then hanging out and then performing Hajj, they owe a hadi. He did this alayhi salatu wasalam, or at least the Hanabila claim that they have good evidence that he did it that way. Other madahib will argue that he did other ways alayhi salatu wasalam. All of it is correct and acceptable, and we leave it to the scholars who discuss these things. I just want you to have an idea. And then the final one is the Qiran. Wow, AI absolutely butchered these forgive these bad slides. Inshallah, we'll fix them. So the second is Qiran. Qiran is where you perform Umrah and Hajj in the same Ihram. So for example, you get there on the 7th or 6th day of the Hijjah. You perform your Umrah, you stay in Ihram for Hajj. You don't leave the state of Ihram at all. You just stay in your Ihram until you do Hajj. And then you for that one you also owe you also owe hadi at the end of it, okay? With different opinions of why you would owe hadi for that one. I'm not going to get into the details there. So you can do tamattu', qiran, or ifrad, and all of them are khair. Just make sure when you decide on one, you know what to do. Like you know what you're going to be doing here. You're going to leave the state of ihram, or you're going to go back. You're going to stay in your ihram, just knowing what you're doing, and whether you're doing umrah before, or maybe doing umrah after Hajj, which is ifrad, the last one you do umrah after, or you don't do one at all because you've already done umrah before, so you don't have to. Okay, we talked about ihram. All right. So what do you do? This is kind of how it starts, how the journey begins, just because I want to help you also kind of visualize what this looks like. So when the day of the 8th of the Hijjah begins, you should be there by then. Like if you're going for Hajj, you should definitely be there by at least the 8th day, because it's called Yawm al-Tarwiyah. Tarwiyah is the day of quenching thirst. Right? Because what the Arab used to do during that day in their history is they would fill all of their buckets or their containers of water. They'd go to Zamzam and they go to different springs of water and fill their water. Why? Because they know Hajj is going to be 2-3 days of walking and standing and a lot of movement. They don't have time to do it, so they fill up on their water so that they don't die from thirst. And you're in the middle of the desert, you have to do that. So the Haram would do that. It's called Yawm al-Tarwiyah. So what you do is you obviously get into your ihram, right? If you haven't done it on the plane, then you do it from where you are, and then you go to Mina before Dhuhr prayer. You're going to go to Mina before Dhuhr, and you're going to pray there in Mina all of the prayers. You're going to shorten the 4 rak'at prayer, but not combine them that day. You'll pray Dhuhr 2 rak'ahs instead of 4, Asr 2 instead of 4, but each one during its time. Maghrib 3, Isha 3, and then you'll pray Fajr. The next morning, you stay all day in Mina, and you just form your tasbih and dhikr and Quran, and then after Fajr of the next morning, which will be Arafah, you head towards the Arafah. So that's how this is going to happen. I'll share these slides inshallah after I fix them, or I thought I had fixed them, but I didn't. You'll find within them, inshallah, different. I explain for you here how to do tamattu and qiran and ifrad, so you know exactly what to do if you're planning on doing this, inshallah ta'ala. All right, so we talked about ihram and miqat. So there are three prohibitions before I start going into the actions themselves, and I explain to you where Arafah and where Mina and where Muzdalifah are, and kind of what journey you're taking. There are three prohibitions in Hajj. فلا رفث ولا فسوق ولا جدال في الحج. There are three things that you should definitely not do in Hajj. There are a lot of invalidators of Hajj. We'll talk about the invalidators. Like if you were to have sexual relations with your wife in Hajj, that can invalidate your Hajj completely. There are certain things, if you do, you lose your Hajj. But the Quran talks about three things that you shouldn't do in Hajj, as in you will lose your reward if you do them. So first one, la rafath. Rafath is any form of sexual expression of any sort. That's called rafath. So looking at the opposite gender, thinking about them, speaking in a way that's flirtatious. Anything, even, and this is regarding your wife. It's not your wife, it's what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? You're going to go from Hajj and Haram during it. Are you completely insane? This, out of all the times in your life that you are going to perform Ghadd al-Basar, you're going to shy away with your gaze and focus on it. It's going to be Hajj. You're going to go and stare at women during Hajj. Wallahi, I saw things during my years there. That was absolutely ridiculous. Like I've seen behaviors of people. What are you? This is Haram. This is Kaaba. This is Yom Arafah. What are you doing? You're standing there, staring at her and asking her name to see if maybe you can ask for me. Yeah, Habibi, do this after Hajj. This is not the time. There's no rafath. It's not a time for your sexuality to be expressed in any form or manner. This is regarding your spouse. These prohibitions are regarding the person that's halal for you to have it with. So if it's your spouse, which is your halal, the person that you should be having these things with, you should not speak to her in a sexual manner. You shouldn't be thinking about her in a sexual manner. And there should be no sexuality that is expressed at all during Hajj. Why? Because, again, it's a state, right? You enter the state of ihram. That part of you, you'll come back to it. It's just a few days. You'll come back to it. Khalas, it's a few minutes. You'll go back and be who you were before. But when you enter the state of ihram, khalas, this is behind you now. I know that you're a sexual being, but for the few days of Hajj, just put that aside and be just a human being, just a worshipper, a creation, a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of all of this large group of human beings. Just lose yourself for a moment amongst these people that you're there with. And don't. So la rafath, wala fusuq, and no deviation. Like no actions of deviation or actions of ma'asi or sin in Hajj. You should not performing fusuq. Nothing. Don't break off. Don't do your own thing. Al-fisq is an interesting word, and here I don't think it's like I'm saying deviation and sin because that's the literal translation. But really, what I believe it means here, because we know you shouldn't sin in any position, not just Hajj. فَسَقَتِ الْحَبَّةُ مِنَ النَّوَى means when the sprout, it breaks off from the seed. So fusuq in Arabic means when something breaks off from something else. We use it as a way to describe sin because you should be on the sirat al-mustaqim, you should be on the straight, righteous path, and then you break off with sin. But any action where you break off in Hajj is frowned upon. Hajj, you're supposed to be like everyone else. That's why we're all dressed that way. That's why there should be no difference between people that day. So don't do anything that will make you stand out. Right? Don't try and do something where you transport yourself differently, or you sit in a different spot, or you have different gadgets, or you're la fusuq, just dissolve into this large group. You shouldn't stand. Don't stand out. Don't stand out. فلا فسوق. Number 3, ولا جدال, and don't argue. Don't enter arguments. This is the most hard part. This is one of the most difficult pieces. Can you imagine, like we run Jumu'ah here, and maybe 700 people if we're busy. People are fighting parking on the way in and fighting parking on the way out. Imagine like 3 million people. They say it's like no, it's always like double that because the census you can't control the numbers that come in. You understand these numbers? I remember one of the first Hajj we performed, I was maybe 7 or 8. We performed the tawaf on the third level. On the third level. It took us like 6 hours to do. I remember we were just walking and I was holding on to my dad. My dad just had us hold on to his belt. So I was holding onto his belt and my sister was holding onto his belt, and he had my younger brother Ismail on his shoulders, and my mom is just in front of him because there's no, we're Canadians, we like our space. We want our personal space. No, like you have no. So he would pick me up so I could take a breath because I'm short. I'm sitting there. I can barely breathe. So he picked me up so I can breathe and put me down and pick up my sister and let her breathe a bit and put her down. And then we would walk and he's picking us up and just making sure that, and Ismail is on his shoulders and my mom's right in front of him, just trying to get through this. SubhanAllah, it's a very powerful experience of survival and of brotherhood and of patience. You're surrounded by people. People will get under your skin and they will annoy you and they'll do things that are not always right. You have to, if you are in this mode of jidal, of argument, and you're not going to get through Hajj. You have to be in the mode of forgiveness and open-heartedness and let things go and just understand people have different backgrounds and different raisings and different experiences and just let it go. So فَلَا رَفَثَ, you don't see the world sexually for these 3-4 days. وَلَا فُسُوقَ, you're not standing out from the group. وَلَا جِدَالًا, you're not arguing with people. And you're there just to dissolve into this larger pot of the human race, which is the whole point of this, right? So those are 3 prohibitions of Hajj. If you do Hajj, make sure you think about this, right? It'll be challenging. It'll be challenging. I've seen people go to Hajj and I saw their behaviors. I'm like, I don't know if this counted for you, brother. Like, I think you should probably go do some anger management this year and come back next year and see if you can do this again. Because you're not there to correct everyone. Like, I understand if you're at other places where you're you're confronting because of mistakes. In Hajj, you just can't. In Hajj, la jidal, don't waste time. Just khalas, let things go. Just keep on moving. Keep on moving with the group. Just move. Keep it moving. Keep it moving, and just let things go and forgive. And don't get into. Just not the time for it. The time for forgiveness, not the time for jidal, for argument. Talbiyah. I love talbiyah. It's my favorite part of Hajj. Wallahi. Favorite part of Umrah and Hajj is talbiyah, because what the words mean. Because what they mean. Labbaika. Labbaik means it's a word. I don't know how on earth you're going to translate the word labbaik. Labba is when someone fulfilled a call. So someone called, and then the person who fulfills the content of the call, like I called for help, the person who came and fulfilled that call, as in came and helped me, like as I asked what I wanted, not to come and ask what I wanted. No, came and offered me what I was asking for. Labbani. So labbaik means I'm responding to your call and I'm coming to you in order to fulfill whatever you called me for. It's one of the nicest things to say to a parent if they call you. And if your parent says, Ya fulan, qulu labbaik, I'm on my way to fulfill your need. He has no need, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I can't say I'm fulfilling your need, but to fulfill your call or the content of your request, right? So labbaik means I'm on my way to fulfill your need, whatever you want. Whatever you want. Labbaik, I'm on my way to you. So labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Oh Allah, labbaik, I'm responding, I'm coming to you. And he keeps on repeating it. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Labbaik. Time and repeating the repetition of this word. Where else do you hear this word? This word is almost synonymous to Umrah or Hajj, is it not? It's synonymous. You hear the word labbaik, you think Umrah and Hajj immediately. That's the only time that it comes out. But it's such a beautiful thing. That's why it's a pilgrimage. You are on your way. So the whole time when you're in the plane, for example, that's what you're saying. Labbaik Allahumma. Oh Allah, I'm coming to you. It's absolutely beautiful. It changes the whole, it really, in my opinion, it changes the essence of the whole journey. Right? Like it's like I miss you, I'm coming. You live, your love lives in my heart, and I am praying to you in your masajid, but I want to come to you. Like I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to die one day and come to you. I want to do it before though. I want to come back to you in this life, and this is the closest I'll get to doing that. or I come to your house, to that first house that was built for you, where you began the whole story, where all of your rahmah is and where all of your grace is, and where everything of beauty that you create is going to be. Labbaik Allahumma. You sent Ibrahim, you sent Adam alayhi salam to call upon people, to call for Hajj, to call to your house, and I heard them call, and I am coming based on that. And I am responding to you. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Labbaik la sharika lak. There is no one with you. Labbaik, I am coming now. I'm on my way. Innal hamda, indeed all praise, wan ni'mat, and all blessings, lak, are all yours. Praise is yours and the blessings are yours. Wal mulk, and sovereignty and ruling. La sharika laka labbaik. There is no one like you, labbaik. There's a lot of other talbiyah. لبيك والنعماء إليك لبيك. There's a number. The Prophet ﷺ, by the way, allowed the Sahaba to perform any talbiyah that they wanted, as long as there was no shirk in it, because there was shirk in some of the talbiyah that they would use before Islam. So he never forced them to say what he was saying. This is the narration of Abdullah ibn Umar and Ibn Mas'ud and Sayyidina al-Khattab. They narrated to us that he said this, But you have all these other narrations where they would add certain things and take certain things away. I don't remember them salahatan. There's only 5 or 6 different variations of labbaik Allahumma that you can memorize and say. But this is the one that's most that he would say the most, alayhi salatu wasalam. I mean, he would say it and he would raise his voice when he would say, and he would tell the Sahaba to do the same. Don't do that in a plane that's not full of Hajjaj. So they'll have an emergency landing and send you to Guantanamo. So don't do that. But whenever you're driving from when you land and they drive you over from Jeddah, then you can perform that talbiyah when you're. Once you perform ihram, you can still do it, but once you enter Mecca, khalas, it's over. Like, you don't perform talbiyah in Mecca. And once you've arrived into the haram, khalas, because you arrived, there's no point of saying I'm coming when you're already there. Like, I'm on my way to you, but you're here. Khalas, it's over. So talbiyah ends once you enter. But everything on the way there. And the Prophet ﷺ would command the Sahaba to raise their voice, and he tells us in a hadith, in different narrations, where he would point out to us that he كأني أنظر إلى موسى على ناقة كذا وقد رفع جأر بالتلبية. So the Prophet ﷺ, on the way to his Hajj, he would point out different spots and say, this spot over here, this is where Musa ﷺ was on his camel, on his way to Hajj. And I can almost see him with my eyes as he was doing labbaik Allahumma labbaik on his way. And here's where Yunus ﷺ performed his Hajj and on his way. And we'll talk about this in the, and I'll talk about all these examples in next week, inshallah, in terms of the prophets ﷺ. So enjoy the talbiyah. Understand what it means. Understand the beauty of, here I am at your service. That's what labbaik means. One word, that's full sentence. So here I am at your service, that's labbaik. That's all, that's one word. That's what it means. Honestly, that's what it means. It's not like an exaggeration. Literally, that's what it means. So you say, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. You're just saying that time and time to him. I'm on my way. I'm coming home. Inshallah. So tawaf, or circumambulation. There are different types of tawaf. When I say different types, they're not different, done differently. They're done the same way, but they're just different wordings for them. So in Hajj, the first 3 are in Hajj. So there are 3 types of tawaf in Hajj, and I pointed them out to you already, but I want to put them here for you just for the sake of your understanding. So the first one is tawaf al-qudum, the arrival tawaf, and that's a sunnah, that's a recommendation. If you don't do that, you owe nothing, it's not a problem. The second one is tawaf al-ifada, that's the pillar. That's the one that you have to perform. That's after Arafah. You leave Arafah, and then you go to Muzdalifah, and then you perform tawaf, or sometimes in between you can do that as well. That's tawaf al-ifada. It's a pillar. And then the number 3 is tawaf al-wada', tawaf of farewell tawaf on your way out, and that's a wajib for the Hanabila. But it's not a wajib for everyone else. Like the Hanafiya, they don't see that to be wajib. They only see one tawaf to be needed. And you owe a hadi if you don't do it. Now, if you only do one tawaf, right? If you only do one tawaf in all of your Hajj, it's going to be considered the pillar one. So even if you made the intention of it being a sunnah, but then you never performed another tawaf later in Hajj, that one that you intended sunnah will be considered your pillar, because you have to do one tawaf. And then you still owe a hadi for the wajib that you didn't do. And you owe nothing for the sunnah that you didn't do. And then you have a tawaf for umrah, and then you have a nafil tawaf, a voluntary tawaf. The sunnah is whenever you go to the haram, even if you're living in Mecca, you go into the haram, perform tawaf. It's a nafil, just a voluntary. It's actually, for example, you enter the masjid, you do tahiyyat al-masjid, right? 2 rak'ah. In the haram, you don't do tahiyyat al-masjid, you go do tawaf. So that's tahiyyat al-masjid for the haram, perform tawaf. It's a sunnah, right? It's a sunnah tawaf. You should have wudu when you perform tawaf. Aside from the Hanafis, everyone else obligates you to have wudu. Right? So this is a tricky one. So I tell people, educate yourselves well before you go. So that if, la samahallah, you are performing that very, very difficult tawaf that took you 5 hours to finish, and then just as you're finishing, someone gives you a nice hit to your stomach that's filled with gas, and you go ahead and you ruin. So then you can just depend on the Hanafi madhab and do Hajj based on Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu. Because he allowed for you to do tawaf without wudu. But the rest of the madhahib don't allow for that. I say this is where you would use this appropriately, because for you to repeat this tawaf, may Allah make it easy for you. That's going to be very difficult. And some people can't hold it for 5-6 hours anyways, during that period of time. So this is a good way out. Again, don't do a tawaf, letting it out just because you can. No, you're not supposed to do that. But if you run into the problem, then you shouldn't. You shouldn't perform that. Yes.
Question. So if you're doing tamattu and qiran,
yeah.
The tawaf, the umrah is considered as tawaf wudu?
No.
So only the umrah tawaf is.
Yeah, the umrah tawaf is umrah tawaf. You want to do tawaf qudum, you do it after, or you do it before the umrah tawaf. Okay, so differentiate the tawaf al-qudum, the tawaf of arrival, from the umrah tawaf. Now, some scholars have allowed to do it together, but if you want to be on the safe side, because usually if you're doing tamattu and qiran, the umrah piece is a bit easy. Like it's not as full yet, so you can, it's not that difficult. You can afford to do 2 tawafs, but.
You have to be in the state of ihram for tawaf wudu?
No. For tawaf al-qudum, you don't need to be in state of ihram. You should be, unless you're. If you're doing tamattu, you won't. Yeah, if you're doing tamattu and you'll do umrah, get out of ihram, then perform tawaf al-qudum out of ihram, that's fine. Yeah, because it's a sunnah tawaf anyway, so it's fine. Yeah, it's a good question. Good question. It's a lot of details here for Hajj. Like a lot of details for Hajj. This is definitely not a full preparation course for it, which I think we have. I think Dr. Munir does them every year for people who are going to Hajj. This is more just for you who's miskeen like me, not going to Hajj this year, just to enjoy the idea and learn a little bit about the rituals so that you're educated. So next year, inshallah, if you go, you're educated about it and you have enough information to build on, inshallah. So, Allah. All right. So this is where. I'm gonna ruin this, but that's okay. I don't care. So let's do this. So this is where you. So this is al-khat. When you go to the haram, you're going to see this on the ground. Make sure you're looking for this. You're looking for that khat al-marma, because when you go there, you want to know where to begin your tawaf. You want to begin your tawaf from this area over here, right? And it's going to be in front of al-hajar al-aswad, as you can see. There are different. So each rukn has a name. So there are 4 angles for the. It's a cube, right? So each side or each angle. What's the word here? What's the rukn called in English? Huh? Corner. So each corner has a name, right? So there are 4 corners. The corner that has al-hajar al-aswad, guess what it's called? The corner of al-hajar al-aswad. That's what it's called, right? And then the one that's to its right. Right? That's going to, if you're standing in front of you're looking at the black stone, the Hajj al-Aswad, the one that's to its right is going to be Rukn al-Iraqi. Because technically, to a certain degree, it's pointing towards Iraq, which is the northeast, to a certain degree. And then the one over there, beside it, it's called the Rukn al-Shami, which, because technically it's directed towards the Sham. And then the one over here after is going to be called Rukn al-Yamani, because technically it's closer to Yemen, if that makes sense to you. When you start your tawaf, you're always going to put the Kaaba to your left. So it's not going to be to your right. Obviously, I don't need to tell you this, because if you do this wrong, there'll be millions of people to point out you're going in the wrong direction. It's going to be very easy. You'll be the only guy walking in the wrong direction. But if somehow it's COVID again and you go do a tawaf and there's only you and the few people there, then make sure you put the Kaaba to the left side. You're going to circumambulate counterclockwise like everything else in the world does. Like every other molecule and everything circumambulates around its center counterclockwise, everything. From the atom to the center of the cosmos, everyone's doing it, and for a few minutes you will too. So you'll stand there and you will start when you're right on this line in front of the Hajar al-Aswad, in front of the black stone. Now technically, if you're capable of going to the black stone and kissing the black stone and making dua, most of the time that's going to be absolutely impossible. So what you do is you turn towards it when you're standing here. So let's say this is the line to the Hajj al-Aswad. You turn towards it, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And the sunnah is to do it 3 times. Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And then you go. If you stop, they will trample you. And you will cause a musibah. So you don't stop. Right? You just keep on going. But once you put your foot on the line, at the beginning of the line, you Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, you keep on going and you say it 3 times. So don't stop, because you can't, if everyone stops, then if everyone's going to do that, there's no way this is going to keep on moving. You're talking about, I think 50, 60,000 people sometimes can fit in that area, so you have to keep on moving. So once you put your foot on the Khat al-Marma, you'll say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar 3 times. And that's what we do in Salah. What you're doing in Salah, you're putting your hands like this, you're saying Allahu Akbar. This is the exact same movement that you make here. You are making it in Salah because you make it here in Tawaf, not the opposite. You do it in Salah this way because you do it there. So your Salah is basically a mini taslim al-Kaaba, that you're starting a ritual. So how do you start the ritual of Tawaf? You start it with takbir. Bismillah, Allahu Akbar towards the Hajj al-Kaaba. And you start your Salah with the same rituals, the same movement, the same basic intention behind it. And you will go around. So once you go, you start here again, same thing. Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and you go around again. You'll do this 7 times, right? Hajj al-Aswad, if you're able to make it towards it, there's barakah and obviously making dua there and kissing the Hajj al-Aswad. This is the door of the Kaaba, as you can see. And then, what else do you need to know? And this is Maqam Ibrahim alayhi salam. It'll be somewhere a little bit behind. This is just a diagram, so it's a little bit behind. If you're able to pray sunnah after your tawaf with Maqam Ibrahim, amazing. But you don't have to. Right? The idea is that you make the intention after tawaf to pray 2 rak'ah sunnah inda Maqam Ibrahim, wherever you pray them. So pray them anywhere in the haram, anywhere in the haram. Just make the intention that these are the 2 rak'ahs that I pray after tawaf inda Maqam Ibrahim, at the Maqam Ibrahim, even though physically you're not at Maqam Ibrahim. Even if sometimes people get smart and what they do is they go stand behind so that Maqam Ibrahim is between them and the Kaaba, and that's probably the best thing. But again, if everyone does that, you'll have a line that goes to Jeddah. So it doesn't work. So just make the intention of praying 2 rak'ahs at Maqam Ibrahim anywhere in the haram when you're done your tawaf. Okay, and then the multazam is this little area between the Hajar al-Aswad and between the left part or the left side of the door of the Kaaba. That area is called al-multazam. And that's where the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As would go and he would stick his body, ﷺ. He'd go up and he would stick his body and put his hands up like this. And he would make dua, ﷺ. It's almost impossible to do these days, but if you're lucky and you're capable, then you should. And then if you see this little area over here, this is called Hijr Ismail. This is where Ismail was taken care of as a baby. Right? Before they rebuilt the Kaaba, Ibrahim and Ismail, when he was being taken care of by his mother Hajar, that's the area. Now that is the Kaaba. So this area here is a part of the Kaaba. It's not, it's actually where the Kaaba, and the Prophet ﷺ was going to add it in after he did Fatah Makkah. So what happened was when they rebuilt the Kaaba during the time of Quraysh, they didn't have enough rocks to complete all of that area. So they made a cube and just put in the lining that that's still a part of the Kaaba. And it stayed like that for years. And then the Prophet ﷺ did Fatah Makkah, and in his mind he wanted to add that piece into the Kaaba, but then he didn't ﷺ. He told Aisha, it's because I don't want to cause fitna amongst the new Muslims. So the first thing I did was I tore down a wall of the Kaaba and rebuilt it. No, leave it. And subhanAllah, he left it ﷺ, and no one did it after him. Like all the khulafa just left it as he. And subhanAllah, the barakah of it is that people can sit in this area here, and technically they're inside the Kaaba, and you can only pray sunnah inside the Kaaba. You can't pray a fard. You can't pray like dhuhr or maghrib. You have to pray a sunnah, but you're allowed to pray a sunnah inside. And you'll see it quite often being full with people praying or reading Quran. It's a beautiful place. I used to sit there a lot when I was a kid because I was small and I could get through groups. Yeah, subhanAllah. But that's just getting a sense of what we're looking at when we're looking at the Kaaba. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve the Kaaba and allow us to visit it, inshallah. Allahumma ameen. And just so know the arkan, know the corners, so that you know if you're going there, know which the Hajar al-Aswad, and know where you're going to start, inshallah, in terms of your tawaf. And I'll share these slides, inshallah, once I fix them, so that you can figure out exactly what it is that you're going to be doing. So that's what it looks like. It looks like from the top, if you look at the Kaaba, an interesting, it looks like a lock, right? It looks like a lock on top. It looks like a lock with a little bit of an opening to it. So, subhanAllah, maybe that's why we go there. Maybe there's a key in doing that, yeah.
So the line doesn't exist anymore.
Have they removed it? So how do people know now? Is there a green light? Okay, there has to be something. I'm sure there's something. It's impossible for the human race to figure out where to start. Eh?
It's on the opposite side. It's not.
So how do you know when to start?
You have to estimate.
So it's just an estimation at this point.
Because you can't.
That is very weird.
You can't look the other way.
Again, I these pictures I use because I remember them being there. Like in the 90s, there was always that line, so I knew exactly where I was starting. Yeah. So when you see it, you know that that's where you should start. So it's like a green light going in a certain direction. So if you know that it's oh, okay. So if you see it coming towards you, then you know this is where you should be starting. Okay, fair. There's something to look at, yani. Okay, khair, inshallah. Yeah, but there has to be some way to figure it out. It's easier on the upper floors, yeah. Well, I'll say this is at the end you're only asked to do your best in estimation. Like if you don't get it 100%, that's fine. Just try to end your tawaf at the same spot that you started it. So if you ended up not exactly at that line, if you were a bit ahead, just make sure when you finish your seventh, finish it at the same spot that you started it. That way, inshallah, you're safe if your estimation was not 100% accurate. MashaAllah. It is, but if it's not on the ground, it's sometimes hard to see. So let's see if do you have a minute? Do you have the 2 minutes? Okay. So this is what the mas'a looks like today. So when you talk about sa'i, right? If you talk about sa'i, this is what the mas'a looks like today. When the Safa and Marwa. There was a nicer picture before. So you see that line at the end? That's what the mas'a looks like. That's where Safa to Marwa. That's kind of how it looks from above. So it's right beside the Kaaba. Once you've done your tawaf, you've done your 2 rak'ah, you'll see Bab al-Mas'i, you can go right towards it, and you will be walking between those 2 small mountains, Safa wal Marwa. And this is what it looks like. And they still have the green lights there, right? They still have those green lights between the 2. Okay. And this is Safa, and this is Marwa. So I'll talk about the wisdom behind it next week, inshallah ta'ala. We're not going to get, this is subhanAllah. I thought I was going to get through all of the jurisprudence pieces today. I'm not. So I'll just talk about sa'i. So sa'i is 7 times as well. You start with the Safa, and then you go to Marwa, to that mountain, it's 1. You come from Marwa to Safa, that's 2. SubhanAllah, there was this old couple, I think they were Malaysian. I was a kid. I remember I had done sa'i. I remember I started kind of with them. And then I finished, and I saw them still going. Then I saw them come back and start going again. So I ran after them and I asked them, Hajji, I think I can count. I think you're done. He said, no, I'm still on number 4. I'm like, Hajji, it's not 1, 2. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you start with Safa, you end with Marwa. Oh, Jazakallah khair. He was so happy because he was tired. He was completely pooped, and he was like, "This is going to take so long." So it's 1 from Safa to Marwa. That's 1 from Marwa to Safa. That's 2. So it's not you go back and forth 1. It's a common mistake that sometimes people don't know. So we start with the Safa and with Marwa. It is the embodying of the actions of Hajar alayhi salam, and I'm going to talk to you about that inshallah next week to explain the meaning for it. What do you do during tawaf and during sa'i? You read Quran. You make dua. You do dhikr, you do invocation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tasbih and tahleel and takbir. That's what you do. Make sure that you don't chit-chat during these actions. Like I see people sometimes, they're walking together and they're just talking about their day and what they're going to eat afterwards. Don't do that during tawaf and sa'i. Make sure you use the time in good in remembrance. And if you're going to talk to people, which is not haram, or it should be in khair. It should be expressing something of love, or something, expressing something that is meaningful, that brings you both closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So chit-chat is frowned upon, but vulnerable, emotional expression to people around you is not. That is actually quite, and the Prophet ﷺ would do this during his sa'i. And every time you come to one of the mountains, you stand there, you turn towards the Kaaba, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and you make dua. Right? And you do tahleel, and la ilaha illallah wahdahu sadaqa wa'dah wa nasara abdah wa azza jundah wa hazama al-ahzaba wahdah. Make that dua, and then you go to the Safa and do the same thing. It's very emotional. I'll give you the examples of inshallah next week. So that's the end of sa'i. We'll continue this inshallah ta'ala next week after Salat al-Maghrib. Jazakumullah khair, subhanallah bihamdik, la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullah khair. We'll go for Salat al-Isha.